Other thing, of course, which is adding to the competitive pressure, is not just all those graduates, but it certainly is. The other thing adding to your competitive pressure is, of course, technology. You love all of these electronic devices. You're so happy to have them. You tap away. I watch you tapping away all the time. I have to watch you tap away, otherwise you walk into me. I'm the only person in the corridor who's actually watching where they're going. Good thing, too. And every time you go tap, tap, every time you deepen the culture of the information age, you take the noose of competition around your neck and tighten it ever so much, ever more. Because the more you go tap, tap, the more you make work move, right? Those communication networks you love make it possible for your job to be put out to auction to the lowest price. For those of you who like the marketplace, that's kind of cool, eh? Only trouble is you don't want to be the person being auctioned off on eBay, do you? No, you want to buy stuff on eBay, you just don't want to be part of the commodity yourself. And then, of course, are the software guys. All around the world, millions of people creating software. Now, a big chunk of them are creating communications software because I have not yet quite exhausted all the communications software known to mankind. They have not yet quite written all the phone apps that could be written. They're getting pretty close. And when those millions of developers turn to something else, they're going to turn to the only other great software challenge that awaits them, that offers money. And that is to, of course, replace human workers. Some of the computer scientists are already doing so. They're doing so very aggressively. Getting rid of workers here, getting rid of workers there. So every time you go tap on an ATM, tap, tap, one more gone worker. Yeah. Tap, tap. Yeah, but those are just bank tellers. You don't care about them. Yeah, but then why are my computer science students creating software that replaces professional work? Analytics software. I bet some of you are quantitatively inclined. I bet some of you are taking quantitative courses. Betcha, betcha. Math is wonderful, isn't it? Math is programmable by its very nature. Math, right? Symbolic logic, deductive. Yes, no. Just what a computer can do best. I'm a mathy. I am destined for obsolescence first before anyone else. Well, think about it, but you do these things without thinking about it. I watch actuarial science students. I'm sure there are none in the room, but if there were, carrying their textbooks, which weigh, I mean, it's like the textbook is obscene. It weighs more than their head does. And I disapprove of any book bigger than the brain case, which is supposed to absorb the stuff. And I look into those books, page after page after page of mathematics. Axi students have to be very careful that none of those textbooks ever fall into the hand of an alert computer science student. The day that happens, whoa, even the Axis will feel the pressure of a competitive economy. So you see, ladies and gentlemen, I have to ask you, I have to draw your attention to the fact that more and more education, other people are doing the same thing. While you're doing all that, the computers are gaining on you. Your real battle is not with a low-cost worker in a country, in a low-wage country. Your real competitor is the machinery. That thing, which stares up its ghostly screen at me, just saying, wait, wait, your days are numbered. Sir, go ahead.
I'm an actuarial science student. I was just wondering, what was your opinion on the outlook of the profession?
Well, the outlook, I'm happy to talk about actuarial science. I'm an economist, of course, so I work in the financial industry as a consultant. So yes, I'm happy to talk about actuarial science, although it's applicable to practically every discipline that would be represented in this place. You do, in fact, know perfectly well that much of it can be turned into software. Some of it has already been turned into software. More is being turned into software faster and faster. You're going to remind yourself and make sure your professors are helping you with this, that what your real job is to assess risk. In a dramatically tumultuous world, risk is rising everywhere. That, from your point of view, is a wonderful attribute of the global economy because it causes everything to get riskier. The environment is less forgiving. It punishes mistakes more quickly. There are more things that can go wrong because the whole supply chain of the world is so complex. In an interrelated world, the degree of complexity goes through the roof, and you should be dancing with joy, thinking, goody, goody, goody. Unless, of course, all of your AXI education is too much math and not about the strategy of how to understand risk. Yes, we need to quantify it. You need to measure risk rigorously. Of course you do. But it cannot, by definition, be pumped up by formulas which are predictive based on the past. Like a bubonic plague, it drives your actuarial tables crazy. There's a whole bunch of things which are disruptive changes. You want to be a star actuary, then you know what of course some of you also know about this idea of personal branding, where you create an image for yourself. Well, of course, I've already told you what the attributes are. You know more, you ask better questions, and you have solutions. But you also have to have a language that is provocatively interesting, right? I'm an actuary. I specialize in the risk assessment of disruption. Doesn't have a nice ring to it. You don't deal with like minor things. That's the implication. That's the implication of it, is it not? And that's a cool thing to do. We need people who better understand the effect of disruptions, because you know what? As an economist, I can project there will be disruptions. Your job is to figure out what the hell will happen, how risky, how likely it is for them to happen. And some of that, sir, is an art, not a science. Or at least not a pure mathematical science. Now, I presume that's what your AXI profs are telling you. Well, but that is the truth. They're certainly telling you about risk, and that your job is to assess risk of wildly diverse events. Except, I think, much of what you learn is assessing risk in a narrow domain, in a domain which is easier to computerize, while the great tumult of the world has not yet been addressed. So you can be a star. See, it's not about, you see, in the olden days, this is what you used to think, that there's certain professions which are licenses to print money, not necessarily that would have occurred to you, sir, and other occupations, like majoring in history, are like a black hole of dumbness. Except I have a history graduate who built one of the largest companies in North America with 100 employees and a kick-ass product. And he makes money being a historian. It's not about the occupation. It is the way you pursue the occupation. It is the orientation you bring to the problems traditionally in your occupation, right? So I hope the man loves risk, because that's why you should have chosen being an actuary. And if you love risk, thinking about it more rigorously, more intelligently, more insightfully than someone else is how you be a star. But the equivalent observations I would make to anybody with respect to any discipline. There's not a single discipline in this room, including economics, that is not having part of the job chewed up by computers. Largely the boring part, so at one level I'm not all that upset about it. So it pushes us all into more creative work. Is this a bad thing? Look, ladies and gentlemen, for all the tapping in computers, you know what that thing does. It doesn't sleep, it has excellent memory, it doesn't get bored, and is not very creative. So how do you distinguish yourself from that piece, that thing there? By being more creative, by being more innovative, by dealing with the exceptions. It can deal with the normal things. You, by contrast, deal with the exceptions. I'm a human. I deal with the big screw-ups. Deal with the machine, deal with the minor ones. You can joke, you can smile. But I ask you to think of the logic of what that machine can do, of the effect of the global economy. And I have trouble understanding how you could conclude that other than you need this distinctive set of attributes. So when you say what you are, like that accent, you say it to where people go, whoa, that must be so cool.
Sir, as you mentioned, so now day after day, there are more and more competitors from all over the world, especially like emerging economies such as China or India. Do you think it is still possible for emerging Americans to preserve the competitive edges that they still have right now? And if so, how?
North America's competitive advantage over the rest of the world is inevitably going to erode. How could it not? You would have to assume, which would be awkward in a room like this, to assume that Chinese persons have some limit on their intelligence, and therefore their ability to compete with North America is constrained. And quite apart from that being an imprudent thing to say, it is preposterous, as you know perfectly well. So given that there is no cap on the talent of human beings in China or India or many other places for that matter, and given that they are now able to compete on a sort of level playing field with North America, it means North America standing with this exceptional degree of prosperity and affluence. It's going to have to start, if it wants to maintain that continued relative degree of affluence over the rest of the world, it'll have to work really, 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 really hard. But it can't work much harder because its head will blow up, so it'll have to work more creatively. So for those people living in North America, it's a simple challenge. Are you going to rise to being this new style worker? Otherwise, otherwise we have the race to the bottom. And I'm sorry, the people who don't do this will race to the bottom. They'll race to the bottom in China as much as they'll race to the bottom in North America. The distinction makes no difference with respect to the world. You want to be an elite worker in China, the same rules are going to apply to you. I mean, one of China's problems is they cannot absorb all the university graduates China itself is producing, while they continue to produce more. Just for example, yeah, North America is going to have to earn its affluence in a more stringent world than it had to earn it in the past. Like young people, like North America, never going to be tougher. Now, I would also say, never more exciting, never more wonderful, never more crazy, never more goofy things to torment the Axi when things go offline, or off plan, or off target, or off trend. Right? So yes, it is to me an exciting endeavor, but I totally respect that I am employed. I happen not to be an employee of the university, by the way, just so don't look at me like I'm a full tenured professor living off the fat of the land telling you to grub in the dust. I'm an adjunct associate professor. That means I'm not an employee. So no gilded pension plan waiting for me. So at least I got the moral high ground. I eat what I kill. And more people will have to. Sir, question? No. Yes, go ahead.
So you mentioned that more and more computers are replacing jobs. And I think in the future, professions like doctors, nurses, and even teachers will be replaced by computers. So what people are going to do? Like what jobs will be created? And are people going to be required to do programming more? Are all jobs required to have technical skills?
Oh, as computers do more and more things, I mean, are we all going to have to become IT workers? Well, the answer is no, because the CSs are so clever they're creating automatic programs. So in fact, fleeing all into the IT sector doesn't work either, because there's also a practical limit to the number of people you need there, and the computers are actually starting to teach themselves. That stupid thing is starting to need fewer programmers on top of everything else yet to stir the pot. In terms of how this all unfolds, what I think, and again, we're looking at the future together, and therefore there is some uncertainty about what is going to happen. What is clearly the case is that the boring parts of all jobs, including those in medicine, that you referred to, are all going to be subsumed by the machinery. So this now presumably leaves us either with really creative stuff, with the exception. So if you're a physician, you have to deal with the weird diseases. You have to deal with the exceptions. You have to be dealing with the fact that you've got to find new treatments for very rare diseases, or very exceptional circumstances where you have a patient that has such a peculiar set of conditions that the machine cannot serve it because that individual is too exceptional. So again, routine diseases will be dealt with in a more automated fashion if you are a physician, a nurse, healthcare provider. But I would say the same thing for a lawyer, for an accountant, for a historian, for a communications major, for all of the great array of occupations we offer. Like, I do not believe that we're going to end up obsoleting many occupations. There may be a few minor ones like factory worker, which has already almost completely disappeared. But most of the occupations remain, they change. and they change and shift towards the creative side of things. Now, there's also some occupations which are inherently human-driven. So, for example, I think there will always be demand for actors or performing professors. Since I do not think you'd want to watch me do it, I do not think it would be as persuasive for an avatar to tell you you are going to be unemployed and work like a dog, as opposed to have me tell you, because presumably as a human I have some affinity with you, while the avatar wouldn't care, probably tells you to work like a dog and drop dead, so he and his friends can take over. But I say that seriously. It is that in the olden days, it was that if you picked the right profession, you had it made. There is no magic profession left anymore. Even the computer scientists are discovering this, because those coders, they get jobs all right, but they work like crazy people. Google, let's refer to Mother Google, for example. Mother Google makes it hard to leave the campus. You know, all the cool stuff you've heard that Google offers, food and massages and dry cleaning and every other thing. So you do not have to leave to attend to the dictates of life, where you can just code till your eyes pop out. Yes, they pay you well. A lot of companies pay you well, and they make you work. I hope you don't want to work so ferociously. Okay, anyway, we'll do maybe 2 more questions. Okay, I saw this guy first, so we'll go with him. Go ahead.
You see that computers are supposed to deal with automated and really competitive tasks, and humans are supposed to deal with the unpredictable and riskier tasks. In the near future, do you think computers will be able to deal with these improbable tasks or black swans?
Oh, black swans, yes. Oh, okay, just very quickly. First, Black Swan is a bad book, you should burn it. I'm just saying that quickly, right? The truth is, the argument that there can be these exceptional things can, if it's misused, is actually asking you to be passive with respect to your environment. If the book is suggesting that you do not try to anticipate disruptive changes and just sit there waiting for some black swan to come. The black swan, nice word, gentle kind of bird. No, it isn't. It's going to bite your head off and leave you wondering what the hell happened. So, first my argument is you want to try to anticipate these changes, right? Now, if you talk about the ability of computers to anticipate, of course, if you give up anticipating disruptive changes, well then the machines will try to do it. Here I have to answer based on the expert knowledge of other people I trust, since I'm not going to present myself as an expert in artificial intelligence. But there are, among many persons, both mathematicians and computer scientists, who spend a lot of time worrying about this issue, that there appear to be some finite constraints on how possibly to create creative machines. Nobody would say they were impossible. One would simply say that in the span of your lifetime, it's either unlikely that they would be able to actually produce highly creative solutions. It is likely that they can create tools to help creative humans, right? Because Mother Google can already help you be creative if you know how to use it in an unusual way, right? For example. So in order to make this work, AI has to have breakthroughs, and there's no knowledge of how the breakthrough may be conducted. Mike Lazaridis, who's, as you know, the founder of the Perimeter Institute for Theoretical Physics, believes quantum computing might in fact lead to computers of such extraordinary capability that perhaps they could do it. But that is still even a possibility, not an assurance, and quantum computing is perhaps decades away from being realized. So for the moment, I think for everyone in this room, to be a creative worker is to guarantee that you will work under favorable conditions, at least for the rest of your lives. Oh, please, I cannot predict the lives of your children. I can just predict that if you don't actually get your act together and become stars, you won't have children, because there will be no time. Or if you have them, then nobody will know, you won't even know their names. Sorry, I think we...
Yeah, I think that's enough.
So, sorry.
No, it's okay.
I must defer to my hosts.
So we'd like to thank Professor Larry Smith for coming down to
It's a big bag.
It's a big bag, small bag.
Thank you, I appreciate it.
Now we're gonna have a short break before we have our next speaker come on down. So feel free to talk amongst yourselves. And there's a
You out. Two of my students had it made. They had what was their dream situation. One is an advertising executive, one a corporate lawyer. They're in New York. They're both making a couple $100,000 a year. They're just past 30. They've got an apartment overlooking Central Park. It's the American iconic dream. They couldn't be happier. They spent $500 on a restaurant meal and think, so cool. Over this expansive view from their apartment, which they can afford. They're Canadian, so they haven't indebted themselves too much yet. If they married longer, they would, but at that moment, and then they said to each other, okay, now we travel, we use posh restaurants, we both these cool jobs. Is there anything we need yet that we don't have? Aha, they thought to themselves. There is one thing we do not have. We do not have one perfect little child. We owe it to the world to reproduce. So they thought that would be a good plan. So then they decided, these are two methodical people, corporate lawyers and advertising executives don't get to be that by being airheads. So then they sat down and said, okay, we must increase the frequency of our sexual activity, being as how this is a cause and effect with respect to increasing reproductive labor. I'm not joking. I don't have to. You see, you think I'm about to make something up. I don't have to make something up. The world is so bizarre and competitive pressure is so great that you don't have to make up anything. So the two of them sat down, methodical that they are. You know, they have life plans. Their lives run very meticulously because they have both these high-pressure, long-hour jobs. And then they sat down and were trying to synchronize their BlackBerries so that they could schedule sexual activity. But not because they didn't have any. It's just that it was like, you know, whenever. So now they want to be more methodical to increase the odds. They have a kid, you know, soon, not late. When they were synchronizing their schedules, they discovered that the next occasion in which they could actually have at each other was 6 weeks. Less sex than they were having as students. Probably shouldn't have said that. And then they struggled more to see if there were any efficiency in scheduling, couldn't, and discovered the second occasion was going to be another month down the track. And they had this horrifying moment of realization. What have we done to ourselves? And they both quit. What did they want, those crazy people? They wanted a life. Isn't that a good thing? To want a life? Or are you going to sacrifice your life to get a paycheck so that you can not have the life that the paycheck would afford? Of course.